Lately, I've been very disappointed with a lot of vehicles for being too expensive for no good reason. But with this Cadillac Lyriq, which is the brand's first ever EV, I'm actually really pleasantly surprised by how much value they managed to pack into this thing without making too many sacrifices to get there.
For more expert car reviews, don't forget to share our channel and subscribe so you can catch some of this and maybe even a little of that.
So interestingly, all Lyriqs come standard with rear wheel drive. And with that setup, that gets you 356 horsepower and 315 pound-feet of torque. And that gets you 525 kilometers worth of range. So if you want to upgrade to all-wheel drive, it costs $4,500. The one I'm driving has all-wheel drive. And with that setup, power skyrockets to 515 horsepower and 450 pound-feet of torque. And with this setup, that gets you 513 kilometers of range. So what I like to see there is that you don't have to sacrifice too much range to get all-wheel drive, because typically with EVs, if you get all-wheel drive, it makes the car heavier and more complicated, and that always negatively impacts range. But this way, you don't really have to choose, which I love to see. Another thing I like about the Lyriq is that it comes standard with a level 2 onboard charger. So if you have access to a 4-prong plug in your garage, that means you don't have to install any specialized charging equipment to get a really fast overnight charge. You can also plug it into a regular 110 volt, but that's going to take you a really long time. In terms of public charging, you can get speeds of up to 190 kilowatts with this Lyriq, and that should give you about 140 kilometers of range in about 10 minutes if the conditions are just right. So part of the reason why I think the Lyriq has so much value is because of how much range it gets. The fact that every single Lyriq comes with at least 500 kilometers of range really puts it in this upper echelon of EVs, because a lot of EVs, even from luxury automakers like Porsche or Mercedes, don't have this much range. So I'm really impressed that they all come with more than 500, which makes things much easier for people like me who don't have access to home charging. So the Lyriq is very fast, but I gotta say, I do not enjoy driving it very quickly at all. It's not very sporty, and that's actually totally fine. So this Lyriq is a lot more focused on luxury and smoothness and comfort than it is performance. And that's okay, because I feel like when automakers try to do both performance and luxury, they end up not doing either very well. So the fact that this is focused on being more comfortable is totally fine. And if you want an SUV that performs better, there is also a Lyriq V coming out soon that should hopefully address those needs. But this one here, I gotta say, is not sporty at all. When you throw it into a corner, there is so much body movement. The suspension is just so softly sprung. And also, I gotta say, the steering is really numb. Like, you cannot feel anything with this steering, and that's a big problem when it comes to performance driving. It helps a little bit if you put it into sport mode, which kind of firms everything up a little bit, including the braking feel and the throttle response. It gets a little bit more responsive, but it's still not nearly as tight as most performance drivers would want it to be. But the problem is, when you put it into sport mode, it reverts back to normal mode every single time you get in the car. So I figured out a hack though. There is a customizable My mode that you can use where you can adjust the steering feel. And if you leave it in that mode, it stays in that mode every time you turn on the car. So that's how I have it set up here. And it means it's very enjoyable to drive. It's also very quiet. So it has active noise cancellation. So you can barely hear any noise from the outside, which makes it even more serene to drive. I am a big fan of how the Cadillac Lyriq is designed, and honestly, I think it looks way better than any competing EV from BMW or Mercedes, mostly because it doesn't look like a bar of soap. But besides having really proper proportions, I really like how the designers put so much attention to detail into the design. Like, just look at this grille. It doesn't need a grille because it's an EV, but instead of giving us just a plain panel of plastic, they put a lot of pretty details into this. So it gives it some added texture. These elements also light up at night, which gives it a really luxurious look when it's dark out. Let's take a look at the back. So back here, I'm also a really big fan of how it looks. In fact, it looks great from every single angle, but there's a couple things I wanted to point out that are kind of annoying. So first of all, it doesn't have a rear wiper. Like, come on, we live in Canada. We should really have a rear wiper. And interestingly enough, there is a washer for the reverse camera, but it doesn't really work. It's not aimed properly, so it just dribbles off to the side and doesn't work, which kind of sucks. I do like the fact that there's a kick sensor, so you can open the trunk if your arms are full, but you can also hit this big Cadillac logo to open the trunk. And I love the fact that there are levers back here, so you could fold down the 60/40 seats automatically. And in the trunk, there's room for about 793 liters worth of stuff. And with those seats folded flat, that opens up to about 1,700 liters. So the trunk offers tons of practicality, and there's good news because they did a great job making the interior very practical as well. I feel like they did a really good job making use of this EV platform and all the extra space that comes with it. So there are tons of places to store your stuff. I love this big, huge shelf under the armrest. You can fit your takeout, your purse, whatever. It's awesome. The compartment under the armrest is good. There's big door pockets that can fit my reusable water bottle. And there's even this little secret leather-lined compartment here, which I'm not really sure what you would put in there. Someone suggested drugs. It wasn't me, but I thought that was an interesting suggestion. My point is that the inside is very smartly packaged, and it extends to the back row too. So there's tons of leg room back there, even if there's a taller passenger in front. And headroom is surprisingly good considering how sloped that roof line is. So I'm really excited that this is as practical as it is pretty. And there's even more good news. Cadillac did a great job making sure that this interior is up to par with what the other competitors are offering. They did a really nice job picking materials because they're all very high quality. The build quality in here is very nice, and there's no hard plastics anywhere. So they did a great job making it feel luxurious. I'm also a really big fan of this huge new 33-inch display that combines the infotainment screen with the touchscreen and the gauge cluster. And on the left-hand side, there's also a touchscreen where you could adjust things like the driver assistance systems or the lighting. So that's really nice to see as well. This system is a new Google-based infotainment system, and that comes with a whole bunch of inherent usability because everyone knows how to use Google, especially Google Maps. And I love that they use Google Maps as their native navigation system because it's so easy to use. And I really enjoy using it because if you're looking for chargers, it makes it very, very easy. So you could filter chargers based on speed or availability or price. And if you input a fast charger as your destination, it will also precondition your battery for more efficient charging. And so I think it makes the EV experience very easy for someone who might be new to EVs. In terms of user friendliness, the setup here will definitely take a little bit of getting used to, especially if you've never driven a Cadillac before. But I've been living with this car for about a week now, and I've become very accustomed to how it operates. So to me, it feels very easy. I love the fact that there are some physical buttons here to control the climate control, which is nice to see. But the touchscreen is great. The menus make a lot of sense. There's also a rotary dial here that you can use to control the touchscreen when you're driving if you can't reach it. So I think it's great to have both options. I also really love the fact that there is wireless Android Auto and Apple CarPlay included as standard, although I'm not a huge fan of the fact that it doesn't use the whole screen. It looks a little bit jokey that there's some dead space around it, but that's fine because it's still very usable. One of the best features of the Cadillac Lyriq is the fact that this top trim model comes standard with Super Cruise, which is GM's hands-free driver assistance system. And it's pretty much one of the only hands-free systems on the market right now. And I really like using it because it makes highway driving a lot less stressful. So Super Cruise works by using pre-mapped data for hundreds of thousands of kilometers of divided highways in Canada and the US, and it combines that with camera data and sensor data to make sure that you're feeling safe. And so I love this system because not only does it make driving on highways less stressful, it's very good at communicating with the driver what's going on and what it sees, so that I can feel comfortable taking my hands off the wheel. And this doesn't mean that you can just take a nap and go for a cruise. You still have to be paying attention. So it's actually monitoring where your eyes are to ensure that you're looking forward and ready to take over if anything should happen. The whole system is very user-friendly, and I was also really happily surprised that it can change lanes on its own to pass a slower vehicle and then get back into the lane when it's safe so that you're not hogging the left lane. Like, how is it possible that this Cadillac Lyriq is a better driver than most humans? I love this system. It's one of the only ones that I actually feel comfortable removing my hands from the wheel. And I think this system gives the Lyriq a huge advantage over a lot of its competitors. So while I like most of what's going on here, there is one huge beef that I have to mention. So I can't even do a shoulder check because all I see when I look that way is this huge pillar and the headrest. And I'm a big believer that you shouldn't have to rely on the safety systems to be able to do a shoulder check. You're kind of forced to in the Lyriq, which kind of sucks, but luckily their safety systems are very good. Now we got to talk about pricing for the Lyriq, which is one of my favorite parts of the Lyriq. So you can get into a base one for about $72,000, but the top trim I'm driving, which is called the Sport 3, costs about 80 grand out the door, but before taxes. And I think that is a great value considering all the things it offers, like the generous range, the great infotainment system, the beautiful design. I think this price makes it one of the most well-rounded and most value-packed luxury EVs on the market right now, and I think that says a lot. To recap, I like the Cadillac Lyriq's stylish design, sophisticated powertrain, and that it offers great value for your money. I'm not a big fan of the numb steering or the big blind spot. For what it is, the Cadillac Lyriq offers tons of value. Considering how much range it offers, that pretty interior, its stylish design, and all of those features, there is no way that you could buy a German competitor with this much stuff for this low of a price. And I know a lot of you guys might be sleeping on Cadillac, but if you're considering buying a luxury EV crossover, don't sleep on this one!